Jennifer. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House, everybody. How are you guys?
Sandy. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, hey, everybody. Let's just make sure everything's cool. We've got a good show tonight. We've got a good video. I think we're gonna have a pretty good show tonight. So what's going on, Jen?
Well, tonight, as usual, we're talking about the Arctic and all sorts of things. It's going to be fascinating, actually, because we've got a lot of different bodies of knowledge to bring together. But before we get to all that, we're going to be talking about the protests that are happening around the world. Fridays for Future, climate protests return across Europe, is our first article. Then we're going to move into an article in The Guardian. Judge issues protest warnings as Paralympian jailed for plane stunt. So this is about a guy who glued his hand to a plane and got arrested and a year in jail. No kidding, right?
Yeah, right.
Then we're going to get right into the Arctic and what's happening. Because the Arctic sea ice hit its minimum extent. That's a benchmark of sorts. So we're going to talk about that from the conversation. Then 2 tweets from Zach Labe about the sea ice up in the Arctic. Very interesting stuff. And then we're going to jump into one. This is fascinating, just out. Also in phys.org. Melting of polar ice shifting Earth itself, not just sea levels, and what could happen with that.
Okay.
And we'll tell you what could happen with that. Yeah. Get ready for more volcanic eruptions as the planet warms. That's one thing that will happen. And then we might play a few minutes of the beginning of Torsten's latest video, Arctic Sea Ice Update, just to get the graph, because Torsten deals with volumes, which are often neglected. And then if we have time, which we probably won't, because these are very juicy articles, we've got a final one also from phys.org, when extreme events are no longer rare, lessons from Hurricane Ida.
So we've got.
So there you go. Yeah.
Well, we're going to start out with one of my creations to, to go over what the deal was for today. And get ready, guys. Sit back, smoke them if you got them, and enjoy. It's for the kids.
The Arctic and the circumpolar north, we are experiencing the climate crisis at up to 4 times the rate as the rest of the globe, a phenomena called Arctic amplification. That means that our homes, our ancestral homelands, are becoming inhospitable to our communities as increasing winter storms are buffering our coastlines, and our sea ice is no longer forming in the same ways to protect our communities from such weather. It also means that melting permafrost and increased erosion is preventing our communities from finding solid ground to build on and to subsist on, as well as disturbing our traditional life ways and subsistence practices.
It's been a really turbulent last year and a half. This has been a time where we have been reminded of how vulnerable we are. But we have also been reminded of how fast things can change and be turned completely upside down. In some parts of the world, we have experienced what it is like to truly treat an emergency like an emergency and to change social norms. But while all this has happened, of course the climate crisis hasn't disappeared. And we have not disappeared. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere hasn't been this high for at least 3 million years. It is clearer than ever that no political party is doing close to enough. But it's even worse than that. Not even their proposed commitments are close to being aligned with what would be needed to fulfill the Paris Agreement. If we want to ensure a safe present and future on planet Earth, we need to be active democratic citizens and go out on the streets like we are doing today. We must keep going into the streets, and we must keep demanding our leaders to take real climate action. We must never give up. There's no going back now. But we can still turn this around. People are ready for change. We want change. We demand change. And we are the change.
There are less than 22,000 Atlantic walruses left in the world, and their numbers almost completely crashed in the last century due to hunting. It wasn't until legislation protected them that their numbers started to recover. But now they've got the additional pressures of climate change. So Arctic species such as walruses, polar bears, and many species of seals rely on sea ice as their habitat. So as sea ice is disappearing due to climate change, they're losing habitat. So we can expect to see more and more of those Arctic species becoming vagrants and becoming displaced from their native habitats and having to explore new range. So we should definitely make sure to keep these animals safe when they seek refuge on our shores, and do whatever we can to avoid harassing or stressing them.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that.
That was very moving, very beautiful.
Thanks. It meant a lot to me to do this today. I've been all embroiled. I know that sounds not sound good, but I've been all involved, and I got the Extinction Rebellion, pretty much the primer of how to do it book, and I've been pouring into that and reading pieces from that, and so I hope I hope you all enjoyed that. I gotta pull the chat up. I can't even see it. I didn't even say hello to everybody. My God, everybody's here. Kim, thank you for modding. I'll say hello later. We've got a lot to dig into. So what I thought was Jennifer would start with the Fridays for the Future climate protests return across Europe while I show some graphics I set up for that. And let's get going. Why don't we start? And this is the article. Here's the article. And I got to move us out of the way. Yeah. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. There was a lot of footage from this Fridays for Future. God, I love Greta. She's just matured into such a lovely, strong, powerful, passionate young woman. Don't you guys just love Greta? She's amazing.
Yes.
Just amazing.
Yeah. Put your hands up in the chat if you love Greta. Yay!
We love Greta.
I do because there's so much criticism as a young woman that she's gotten, and she stands up to it and does not care. Criticize away. Awesome. Yeah, she can handle it. So that's awesome. Yeah, it is. All right. So while Jennifer does this article, I've got some graphics that I stole from Twitter. And Jen, take it away, guys. Listen,
Okey-doke.
listen up.
So this is Fridays for Future climate protests return across Europe. Protesters hit the street in cities across Europe and around the world on Friday, demanding governments do more to fight the climate crisis. Some of the largest demonstrations were in Germany. And remember, Sandy, we just did that
Yeah.
video with that guy from Germany, Chris Billberger, right?
Yep, we sure did.
Where citizens head to the polls in elections this weekend. Environmental activist Simona Haslier was, downbeat about the chances of impacting votes in Sunday's election, but said it was an important time to grab people's attention. Quote, I think it's especially important to send a signal today before the federal election, and I hope that especially many people in the older generation will think about how they will vote when they see how many young people are worried about the future, end quote, Haslier told the Associated Press. In Berlin, protesters marched through the streets carrying a banner with the slogan, Fight for Climate Justice. Another demonstrator held up a pink sign that simply read, This world is on fire. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who started Fridays for Future movement, also appeared at the rally in the German capital. Quote, if there's one other thing that this pandemic has shown us, it's that the climate crisis has never once been treated like an emergency. It's clearer than ever that no political party is doing close to enough, end quote, she told the crowd. Ain't that the truth? Hashtag uproot the system. The Fridays for Future group recorded more than 1,500 different events on its website, with the majority in Europe. Among many others, there were also gatherings in Vienna and Warsaw. Meanwhile, events were registered in Buenos Aires in Argentina, Cape Town in South Africa, Mumbai in India, and Sydney in Australia. The waves of global protests was coordinated on social media throughout the hashtag uproot the system. Climate pledges in New York. Fridays for Future movement was reignited after a week of climate action promises from world leaders in the United Nations General Assembly in New York, COP26. The annual gathering of world leaders took place before the COP26 UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, UK. We must get serious and we must act fast. COVID-19 and the climate crisis have exposed profound fragilities of societies as societies and as a planet. Yet, instead of humility in the face of these epic challenges, we see hubris. Instead of the path of solidarity, we are on a dead end to destruction, said United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday. That's pretty strong words. And that is pretty much it for that article. But people are activated, Sandy. Everybody can see what's happening, even those not looking at it too closely, right?
Absolutely, Jennifer. I mean, but of course there's going to be the ugly people online and social media that are putting her down, saying it's bullshit. I saw it today all day,
Really?
all day when I was looking. Oh yeah, there's horrible trolls and ugly people. The evangelical Christians don't believe anything's going on in this country. If you just have to, you see where on their comments on these certain videos, they don't think it's happening, or they think they have their escape hatch, but they don't have an escape hatch. Sorry guys, but you're going the same way every other species is going.
God.
Yeah.
So
there
much
you go.
ignorance. So much willful ignorance.
Willful ignorance. I hear you, sweetheart.
Really?
So the next one is it's willful protesting. But I think that the ignorance part is on the judges on this one. And this one highlights what happened when this para-Olympian was jailed for what they're calling a plane stunt. And the UK is saying disruptive protesters will face serious consequences in sentencing. Now, this was after their 13-day, I think it was 12 to 13-day climate action event. I mean, it was insane all over the place that they had. Oh, boy.
It started with all those naked people all over London. Right?
That picture, right?
That was
right.
shocking. I was finding out about that at the moment you were showing it to me live. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, it was fun. It was fun. So, well, they got attention. So this guy, James, he's James Brown, one count of causing a public nuisance, claiming he had to do something spectacular to draw attention to the climate crisis. So they are, he's a British Paralympic gold medalist, and now he's going to be in jail for a year. And get that, this guy glued himself to the roof of a passenger jet in the protests. And he's the first custodial sentence for any action linked. And I'll tell you what, it's Jim says protesters go to jail, fuel execs get bonuses. Yeah, right. Yeah, man. XR said it was shocked and devastated by the sentence. Maybe they didn't expect a year for this guy. Handed to James Brown. He's only 56, so 1 year, it's a lot. At Southwark Crown Court in London. And they say he's from Exeter, and who has been registered blind since birth, cynically used his disability to put his own life at risk when he staged his protest at London City Airport in 2019. So that's how long it's been going on. At the height of XR's second extended campaign of protests in London. So this is pretty messed up. And they found him guilty of causing a public nuisance after less than an hour. And you know what'll happen? They're trying to make other protesters not want to do these kind of actions to draw attention to this in the way he did. And I wish that it wasn't so harsh. I think a year is a long time for this guy.
It is.
They are shocked. They said they were shocked and devastated. But see, a lot of people around the world will say, well, these are idiots. They did it to themselves. This is what I saw on Twitter. Are these idiots and morons blocking traffic again and all? And I don't know what you do anymore. We can't vote it in. We can't, how do you wake up the masses but to do shocking things? At least people start talking. So if they call you a moron for doing it or blocking traffic, eventually somebody in the circle is going to say, well, what are those morons talking about? If they think they're morons, maybe. But we are in such a split, divided world, Jen, that to me, it is just going to get worse. Jim, see, he would set himself on fire, but the CO2 has me dissuaded. Oh, thanks, Jim. Okay, thanks. We have our resident activist with us because he's out there every single Friday. Every Friday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jim McHenry rocks, guys.
Really he does. He does. Thank you, Jim, for being with us.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much more to say other than let's see what you guys are saying before we move on to our usually topic of that we like the best is the Arctic. And I'll say hello to Gazer and Old Sage Joe and Raza and J.A. Hi, J.A. and Tina and Bella, which is Kenny or Christina. There's a lot of people here, Jen. It's wonderful. Thank
That's
you all for joining
awesome.
us. Thank you all for
Awesome.
joining us. And if you have not, please like and subscribe. I kill myself doing this show 3 days a week. It's starting to kill me. So at least like and subscribe. Give us some
At the
algorithms.
very least.
Yeah, I'm
At
not
the very
monetized.
least.
I'm not monetized. I will not monetize. I will not make anybody sit through corporate bullshit commercials. So there. Okay. So you at least subscribe to us. All right. Let's move on. I did my little PSA.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
It's
Ooh, boy.
September. It's getting into now we're into fall. We just passed the
Yeah.
equinox this week. And another thing that happens in fall is we get the Arctic sea ice extent minimum. And in fact, it has come and gone. So the Arctic sea ice hits its minimum extent for the year. 2 NASA scientists explain what's driving the overall decline. Now, this article, I've got a couple of different feelings about it, and we'll get to it. But it's got some good graphs, but I just kind of want to address those graphs. So September marks the end of the September sea ice melt season, summer sea ice melt season, and the Arctic sea ice minimum when the sea ice over the northern hemisphere reaches its lowest extent of the year. For ship captains hoping to navigate across the Arctic, this is typically their best chance to do it until next year or the year after, right? Then,
right.
Yeah, especially in more recent years. Sea ice cover there has dropped by roughly half since the 1980s as a direct result of increased carbon dioxide from human activities. As NASA scientists who wrote this article, we analyzed the causes and consequences of sea ice change. In 2021, the Arctic sea ice cover, and this is extent only, not volume, reached its minimum extent on September 16th. While it wasn't a record low, a look back through the melt season offers some insights into the relentless decline of the Arctic sea ice in the face of climate change. The Arctic is heating up. In recent years, Arctic sea ice levels have been at their lowest since at least 1850 for the annual mean, and in at least 1,000 years for late summer, according to the latest climate assessment from the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC concluded that the Arctic is likely to be practically sea ice free in September at least once before 2050.
Oh,
well,
really? You think?
That's talk about conservative.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
It is. It's humorous.
All right. So, Sandy, let's look at this little graph.
All right, let's
They're
see if I
giving
can
us
get this
different
bigger.
scenarios. Right?
Yeah.
This one with all the little colored lines after the present date. So this graph, the color starts now, right?
All right, that's better. Okay.
Okay. Now look at the black line. That's where we have been this year. And they give like 5 or 6 different scenarios, right? They've got the blue scenario, light blue scenario, which actually shows the sea ice stabilizing completely like soon, which I think is highly wishful thinking. And then even like the purple line at the bottom, even that shows it lasting into 2100. So I don't know. I think this is wishful thinking. I don't know.
There's a lot of that going around, Jennifer.
Yeah.
But
and wait till you hear the end of this article. You can see that this is really wishful thinking. But
I read it. All right, let's go.
As the Arctic bright ice is replaced by darker open ocean surface, Less of the sun's radiation is reflected back into space, driving additional heating and loss. This albedo feedback loop is just one of several reasons why the Arctic is warming about 3 times faster than the planet as a whole. What happened to the sea ice in 2021? The stage for this year's sea ice minimum was last winter. The Arctic experienced an anomalous high pressure system and a strong clockwise winds, driving the thickest, oldest ice of the central Arctic into the Beaufort Sea north of Alaska. And we'll be able to see this on one of Zach Slab's Twitter.
Yes, we sure will.
Yeah. Sea ice scientists were taking note. Summer melt began in earnest in May, a month that also featured multiple cyclones entering the Arctic. As if one wasn't good, we had multiple. Yeah. This increased sea ice drift, but also kept temperatures relatively low, limiting the amount of melt. Well, the extent and pace of melting increased significantly in June, which featured a predominantly low pressure system and temperatures that were a few degrees higher than average. And here we go, Sandy. This is the Arctic sea ice decline decade to decade. This is a graph that they've got here. Yeah. So the red is where we are now, right?
Yep.
And
I got it.
actually, we are right in alignment with the 8-year average of 2011 to 2019 average. We're right in there. But that is, again, guys, the extent, not the volume. The volume continues to decrease. So you're kind of getting a thinner and thinner pancake. So, what could possibly go wrong in that picture? By the beginning of July, conditions were tracking very close to the record low set in 2012, but the rate of decline slowed considerably during the second half of the month. Cyclones entering the Arctic from Siberia generated counterclockwise winds and ice drifts. This counterclockwise ice circulation pattern generally reduced the amount of sea ice moving out of the Arctic through the Fram Strait east of Greenland. This likely contributed to the record low summer sea ice conditions observed in the Greenland Sea. This ice circulation pattern also increased ice export out of the Laptev Sea off Siberia, helping create a new record low for early summer ice area in that region. The low pressure system also increased cloudiness over the Arctic. Clouds generally block incoming solar radiation, reducing sea ice melt, but they can also trap heat lost from the surface. So their impact on sea ice melt can be a mixed bag. In August, sea ice decline slowed considerably, with warm conditions prevailing along the Siberian coast, but cooler temperatures north of Alaska. The Northern Sea route, which Russia has been promoting as a global shipping route as the planet warms, was actually blocked with ice for the first time since 2008, although icebreaker-supported transits were still very much possible. At this stage of the melt season, the sea ice pack is at its weakest and is highly responsive to the weather conditions of a given day or week. Subtle shifts can have big impacts. Freak end of summer weather events have been linked to the record low sea ice of 2007 and 2012. The Great Arctic Cyclone of 2012 is an interesting example. There's ongoing debate over the effect they have. However, scientists are broadly in agreement that specific storms may not have actually played that big of a role in driving the record lows in those years. Things are never straightforward when it comes to weather and sea ice. You notice, guys, they haven't mentioned volume once yet in this whole thing. It's all extent. It's almost like volume doesn't exist yet.
There's actually a question, Jen, that we will address
Yeah.
after this article on kind of that question.
Yeah, exactly. The Arctic sea ice reached its 2021 minimum extent on September 16th, coming in at 4.72 million square kilometers, 12th lowest on record extent. So the 2021 melt season was, despite all the stops and starts, pretty typical for our new Arctic, with September minimum ending up slightly higher than what we would have expected from long-term downward trend. But various new record lows were set in other months and regions in the Arctic. As the hours of sunlight dwindle over the coming weeks and temperatures drop, Arctic sea ice will start to refreeze. The ice pack will thicken and expand as the surrounding ocean surface temperatures drop toward the freezing point, releasing a lot of heat that had been absorbed and stored through the summer. Now, this is kind of interesting, Sandy, this map with the big red blob right over the Chukchi Sea. You see that thing?
It is. I see it.
Yeah, this is the freeze trend. And anything that's bright red is 25 days later than it used to be, from 79 to 2019 on average. Anything blue, which you can see there is no blue, is 25 days earlier. So it's basically, is it freezing earlier or freezing later? It's freezing later, especially just north of Alaska in the Chukchi Sea, right through the Bering Strait. That place is getting really hot, and hence it's freezing much later.
I need a pointer. I need a pointer so that when we're talking, I can actually see the point. I'm gonna look into that. I want a pointer. I think it would help us. Yeah.
No, most definitely. This refreeze has started later in recent years, shifting into October and even November. The more heat the ocean gains during the summer, the more heat needs to be lost before ice can begin to form again. Well, that's pretty logical. Because of this, some of the biggest warming signals are actually observed in fall, despite all the attention given to summer ice losses. There's still a lot we don't know. For people living and working in the high Arctic, understanding local ice conditions on a given day or week is really what matters. And predicting Arctic sea ice at these more local scales is even more challenging. It's a hard place to work, right?
Oh, I would imagine.
Yeah. As 2021 demonstrates, sea ice is highly dynamic. It moves and melts in response to the weather patterns of the day. Think of how hard it is for forecasters to predict the weather where you live with good understanding of weather systems and many observations available, compared to the Arctic, where few direct observations exist. Weather events can also trigger local feedback loops. A freak heat wave, for example, can trigger ice melt and further warming. Winds and ocean currents also break up and spread ice out across the ocean, where it can be more prone to melt. Sea ice scientists are working hard to understand these various processes and improve our predictive models. A key missing part of the puzzle for understanding sea ice loss is ice thickness. Finally, they're almost done with the article. And they mentioned the word thickness. God help us. Yeah. Thickness area equals volume, right? We know that. Like area, sea ice thickness is thought to have halved since the 1980s, meaning today's Arctic sea ice pack is only a quarter of the volume it was a few decades ago. For those hoping to navigate the Arctic Ocean, knowing the thickness of any ice they may encounter is crucial. Sea ice thickness is much harder to measure consistently from space. However, new technologies like ICESat 2 are providing key breakthroughs. Now, here's where the bargaining comes in. Despite all this uncertainty, it's looking pretty likely that summer ice-free Arctic conditions are not too far away. That is true. The good news,
They are.
the, the good news is that the path forward is still largely dependent on future emissions. Well, they're not talking about how the Arctic Ocean is really heated up. That doesn't really go away very quick.
No.
And there is
Hot.
still no evidence
Hot.
the planet has passed. Okay, here's the bargaining part. And there still is no evidence the planet has passed a tipping point of sea ice loss, meaning humans are still very much in the driver's seat.
Oh God. Well, we're going to be in the driver's seat until we run out of gas, and that's just the goddamn honest truth. And we're going to run out of gas, and then we're going to run out of air, and then we're going to run out of, well, it's not in that order. Food, and we're going to run out of, well, we're not going to run out of water, only in certain parts. They run out of water in California, but we're not running out of water in Louisiana. So yeah, my God, that was pretty good. I think you want to pull up Zach Labe's Twitter. We'll look at which one do you want to look at first?
Let's see. The one I have up is called The Rapid Transformation of Our Arctic.
That's the one I have up in Twitter. This is Zach Labe.
Thinner ice. Yeah, thinner ice is easier to fracture. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Winds and currents push thinner ice around more easily, flushing it out of the Arctic faster than multi-year ice. And look at this timeline of the thick ice. So the white is the thickest ice, and the blue, the dark blue, is the thinnest ice. So we're watching the white basically disappear, and you see this stream of white that's kind of ending up into the Beaufort. And remember, we heard that the cyclones that went into the Arctic were pushing the ice into the Beaufort and probably exporting it somewhere else. I don't know, but definitely pushing it around. There's very little, I would say there's probably no multi-year ice left in the Arctic. And this little tiny thin band of ice, that's the thickest ice that's left. And it's just kind of skimming along the north of Greenland, the Canadian archipelago, and ending up in the Beaufort Sea.
Fascinating.
Isn't that sad?
Fascinating.
Isn't that amazing?
And sad. It's amazing, sad, fascinating, all at the same time, because we are living witnesses to this mess. And the kids that, the big thing for me is you do that, and you see these kids protesting, and as adults, we know that it's going to be so difficult for them as time goes on, and it is heartbreaking, tragic. It's the tragedy of our time. They didn't ask to be born into this, so it bugs me. And for all of you who are parents out there, and grandparents, we shoulder the burden of the pain for the kids. They may have to live through it, but we're shouldering that burden of pain, and it isn't easy for any of us. It is not. Yeah. And I only have one, but I know that there's people in our audience here and our followers that have grandchildren, children and grandchildren. So I applaud you for being able to handle this, as well as having families and still being here with us. And hopefully the coming season, we can offer some more supportive shows on how to cope with this. This whole situation. Okay?
It's very difficult to cope with it, Sandy.
I know. Well, I know we both have coping mechanisms. You're working and I'm working. I mean, every day, like today, every show day for me gets more and more involved because there's a lot to it. And then all the other things I throw myself into. And I'm sure that a lot of us are like this because we are doers, and it's easier sometimes if you don't, you're so busy you don't think. It's hard. And so perhaps we can bring some heart people in this year. We have done a good job in the past.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Sandy, what do you
Yes.
say we look at Zach Labe #2,
Number
annual
two.
annual temperature anomalies in the Arctic since
Here we
1950, right
are.
until the end. Now,
Okay.
because this is a temperature anomaly map, and this this
Look.
GIF or graphic, whatever you want to call it, starts in 1950. And in the beginning, since it's temperature anomaly, there's kind of a fair distribution between blue and red, right? And then as time goes on, there's just more and more anomalous heat
You know what? I
in the
should have
Arctic.
started it.
And in 2020, you can see all the heat in the Arctic kind of stacked up right where the Laptev Sea is actually. Coincidentally, that's where the methane stores. I mean, there are methane stores throughout, but there's a huge methane deposits in the East Siberian Sea and in the Laptev Sea and in the land. And it's just kind of centered right over that Siberian peninsula. There's the Yamal Peninsula, there's the Kara Sea, and there's the Laptev Sea. And right there at the very end, if you look at it when it hits 2020, it's just pure red right over the Siberian peninsulas. It's really pretty notable, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Thank you for doing such a great job with narrating Zach's work. He's
He's awesome,
really,
isn't he?
yeah, he really is awesome. You can go on YouTube and let's just, I wanted to get to that one question before we move on, actually. And that was from Jim, and again, our resident activist. Doesn't fresh water on the Arctic surface freeze easier? Thus the surface freezing, but not volume increase.
Bingo, bingo, bingo. And Jim, that phenomena that you alluded to, the fresh water having a lower freeze point than the salt water, we all know that's true. That's how they made ice cream in the old days, is you dump a bunch of ice and rock salt and then keep stirring it around and it gets colder than it would normally. Conversely, if there's a bunch of fresh water on top of the Arctic Ocean, which that is continually being supplied by all the freshwater rivers that are going into the Arctic Ocean, right? Yeah. That, of course, is going to freeze, but it's going to be very, very thin. It's going to be a skin. A skin of a skin. And that's also, if you look at Antarctica, right? The deniers always bring it up. Well, the sea ice. The sea ice in Antarctica is actually increasing, as if that one small fact that they're saying, about the sea ice extent in Antarctica around the continent is going up. Yes, there's a lot of fresh water that's coming off of Antarctica in the way of melt, and it floats upon the top of the water. Even though it's cold, fresh water is much lighter than salty water, so it will float and it will stratify and it will melt and it will make it appear as if Antarctica is just going through another ice age. That's not the case.
And I've seen it. I've seen them talk about it. Now, did you say denier? There you go. And this is for you, Heartland Institute. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Fuckwads.
Oh, thank you. We had to get it in somewhere. All right, so we're going to move on, guys. We're going to move on. I am going to start this one. And this one, and of course, Jennifer will be describing the actual deep science that goes with this, but melting of polar ice shifting Earth itself, not just sea levels. That's pretty hairy. You know that
Mhm.
so let me read this and we'll get to a little talk about this one. The melting of polar ice is not only shifting the levels of our oceans, it is changing the planet Earth itself. Newly minted PhD Sophie Coulson, let me move down so you could see Sophie. There she is, all happy to be doing her newly minted PhD, and her colleagues explained in a recent paper in Geophysical Research Letters, Earth's crust beneath these masses warps, an impact that can be measured hundreds and perhaps thousands of miles away. So it's beneath these land masses warps. Impact. That's wild. Scientists have done a lot of work directly beneath the ice sheets and glaciers, said Coulson, who did her work in the Department of Earth and Planetary Science and received her doctorate in May from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So they knew that it would define the region where the glaciers are, but they hadn't realized that it was global in scale. By analyzing that satellite data on melt from 2003 to 2018 and studying changes in the Earth's crust, Coulson and her colleagues were able to measure the shifting crust horizontally. Their research, which was highlighted in Nature, found that in some places the crust was moving more horizontally than it was lifting. So in addition to the surprising extent of its reach, the Nature Brief pointed out this research provides a potentially new way to monitor modern ice changes. To understand how ice melt affects what's beneath it, Coulson suggested imagining a system on a small scale. She said, think of a wooden board floating on top of a tub of water. And when you push that board down, you know, you would have the water beneath moving down. If you pick it up, you see the water moving vertically to fill that space. So these movements have an impact on the continued melting. In some parts of Antarctica, for example, the rebounding of the crust is changing the slope of the bedrock under the ice sheet, and that can affect the ice dynamics, said Coulson. This is pretty cool, isn't it? She worked she's worked in the lab of Jerry Mitrovica, the Frank Baird Jr. Professor of Science. The current melting is only the most recent movement researchers are observing. The Arctic is an interesting region because, as well as the modern day ice sheets, we also have a lasting signal from the last ice age, Coulson explained. An ice sheet once covered what is now Northern Europe and Scandinavia during the Pleistocene epoch, the ice age that started about 2.6 million years ago, and lasted until roughly 11,000 years ago. The Earth is actually still rebounding from that ice melting.
How
Wow.
interesting.
It is.
That's That's so bizarre.
Wow. On recent timescales, we think of the Earth as an elastic structure, like a rubber band. Whereas on timescales of thousands of years, the Earth acts more like a slow moving fluid, she said, explaining how these newer repercussions come to be overlaid on the older reverberations. Ice age processes take a really, really long time to play out, and therefore we can see the results of them today. And the
Amazing.
implications, it is. The implications of this movement. Oh, you know what? I got to do
What?
something. Nothing. I have to make it a little smaller. The implications of this movement are far-reaching. Understanding all of the factors that cause movement of the crust is really important for a wide range of earth science problems. For example, to accurately observe tectonic motions and earthquake activity, we need to be able to separate out this motion generated by modern day ice mass loss, she said. So she is continuing her research. She's going to continue her research, which is great. In as the research under the postdoctoral fellow at Los Alamos in New Mexico as part of a climate group that works on future projections of ice sheets and ocean dynamics. Glenn Anthony Milne, professor of earth and environmental scientist at the University of Ottawa, explained that understanding the extent of this movement clarifies all studies of the planet's crust. Sophie's work is important because it is the first to show that recent mass loss of ice sheets and glaciers causes 3D motion of the Earth's solid surface that is greater in magnitude and spatial extent than previously identified, he said. Also, one can look for this signal in regional and larger scale global navigation satellite system datasets too. In principle, produce improved constraints on the distribution of ice mass fluctuations and or solid Earth structure. That was a cool article.
Mm-hmm.
You found that one.
Yeah.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Water and cucumber.
Yeah. Well, the everything is very elastic. It's not. The continental plates are elastic. They move up and down on the mantle. They kind of go under each other, in certain earthquake zones and split apart. I mean, it's just amazing how dynamic the Earth's crust is.
I'll say. How you doing out there, everybody? I'm just going to let's check in with the chat and see if anybody, I don't see any questions. No, I don't see any questions on that. So Jen, do you think we should, go on and do the Scientific American and kind of segues?
I think so, because this is kind of the what can happen. I think it's very interesting. This is the one about the volcanoes. Get ready for more volcanic eruptions as the planet warms. A new study shows that even relatively small-scale climatic change affects volcanic activity. Now, this didn't come out too recently, but the principle remains the same. Mm-hmm. And so some of the events that they allude to happened like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but it doesn't matter. The principle is the same.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of people have evacuated their land in Bali as nearby volcanoes.
You could say recently, right? They're evacuating. Yeah. They've evacuated in Hawaii. They've evacuated in Iceland, and they're evacuating in Spain. Yeah, take your pick.
Take your pick. Many Balinese hold the mountains sacred and accept its occasional outbursts as moral admonishments, where geologists consider this activity a routine part of Earth's behavior. But scientists have found another force, climate change, affects the frequency of eruptions. Now, a study shows that even relatively minor climate variations may have such an influence. If they are right, today's global warming could mean more and bigger volcanic eruptions in the future. Throughout its history, Earth has gone through periods of massive natural climate change, such as entering and leaving ice ages. Scientists have noted volcanic eruptions tend to increase as glaciers melted. In a study published in Geology, researchers looked at smaller scale changes in glacial coverage to see if these incremental differences had any effect. The scientists focused on eruptions in Iceland about 5,500 to 4,500, so 5,500 to 4,500 years ago. I was not aware of this little ice age, mini ice age that lasted about 1,000 years from 55 to 4,500 years ago. I did not know about that. There are lots of
something new every day.
Events,
yeah.
Right? This was kind of after the big ice age it kind of dipped back in 5,500 years ago. During that period, Earth's climate cooled and glaciers grew, but there was no full-blown ice age. We were already well melting, that which
Mm-hmm.
started like 12,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
14,000 years ago. To reconstruct a timeline of volcanic activity, the researchers examined Icelandic eruption record as well as a record of ash that fell in Europe during those Icelandic eruptions, which ultimately settled into microscopic layers in the continent's peat bogs and lakes. The author says he and his colleagues match these layers to specific Icelandic volcanoes. Isn't that amazing?
It
They looked
is.
at the ash, they
And
looked
they've
at
been
the isotopes,
erupting.
and they're like, oh, well, you come from Bunga Bunga,
Jennifer.
then, yeah, then developed a detailed timeline of increase and decrease in eruptions. Remember when Iceland was erupting? I can't remember what year it was, and
Well, it's,
Heathrow was shut down for the longest
oh,
time.
and then now
Remember
it's
that?
still erupting. It's now the erupting hasn't stopped. There's an Iceland cam on YouTube.
Wow,
I
that's
probably could
amazing.
pull it up. Oh,
When the scientists compared the volcanic record with glacial coverage, they found the number of eruptions indeed dropped significantly as the climate cooled and ice expanded. There's a big change in the record in the mid Holocene epoch, where we see no volcanic ash in Europe and very little in Iceland.
mm,
This seems to overlap with a time when there's cold climate conditions, which would have favored glacial advance in Iceland. He says that his team observed approximately a 600-year lag
whoops.
between when glaciers advanced and volcanic activity diminished. That's because it takes a long time to grow ice mass. So ice, slow to grow, quick to melt. It's basic principle, right?
Okay,
The
let's
new
repeat that.
study, yeah, ice is slow to
Slow to
grow and
grow,
quick to melt.
quick to melt.
Slow to
Everybody
grow,
got that?
quick to melt.
Okay.
Slow to grow, quick to melt.
Quick to melt.
Quick to melt. Quicker, and quicker.
Yeah.
Quickest.
Yeah, we don't mean to laugh either.
Quicker, quickest.
Quickest. There you go, Jen. Shades of
The new
grammar school.
study is looking at maybe the smallest magnitude climate change yet to show it has influence on volcanic activity. To see this change in an interglacial period indicates that there's even a more subtle relationship between climate change and volcanism, right? Maybe even small changes in ice volume can really affect volcanism. Although scientists do not fully understand why glaciers appear to weaken volcanic eruptions, they do believe the mechanics may be fairly straightforward. Here it is. When glaciers expand, all that ice puts immense pressure on Earth's surface. It can affect magma flow and voids and gaps in the earth where magma flows to the surface, as well as how much magma in the crust can actually hold. When the glaciers retreat, the pressure lifts and volcanic activity surges. So it's when the glaciers finally go away, the whole thing goes,
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. The magmas more easily propagate to the surface and thus erupt. This is exactly what he and his team found when they looked at what happened as the Earth warmed up again and glaciers melted. They counted more eruptions. Again, they saw a time lag. This time between ice melt and the rise of eruptions. But this gap was shorter, remember? Quick to build, slow to build, quick to melt.
Quick to
right?
melt. Yeah.
Quick to melt. It takes relatively less time to melt ice if the temperature goes up. Golly, fancy that. So, if you're looking at a period of warming and subsequent volcanic flare up, the lag may be a lot shorter. He notes that when volcanic eruptions occur during cooler, ice-covered times, they appear to be smaller in magnitude. As the climate warms, eruptions seem to get bigger. Edward notes Iceland's unique geology make it a very volcanically active compared with many other places. However, and also perhaps more vulnerable to the ice effect than other regions. It's probably a place that is extra sensitive to glaciers growing and melting. Whether this phenomena will occur with modern day climate change is not yet known. But this was 4 years ago, so maybe it's known now, right? It might be known.
Yeah.
Right? They say the glacier coverage changes his team studied are similar in magnitude to what Earth will likely experience due to human-influenced warming. I think we can predict that we're going to see a lot more volcanic activity in the areas of the world where glaciers and volcanoes interact. Right?
Interesting stuff.
He says this is cause for grave concern for business, such as airlines. I remembered when many airports shut, and I remember in particular Heathrow shut. Oh, that was when my sister was going back to Heathrow. That was in 2011. That
11?
If I'm not mistaken, because my sister was stuck in Greece. She was trying to get back to Heathrow to London, and she couldn't because Bunga Bunga was erupting, and it shut down Heathrow. That's not the name of it. I just can't remember. It's some Icelandic name, right? So volcanic ash and emissions can be deadly, if not at least very damaging. So there you have it. Volcanoes and climate change and ice. It's all connected.
And now we are looking at last week in Iceland. Look at that. That's been going on for a while. Yeah, the volcano. Look at that. I can fast forward, and then it goes into the nighttime.
Amazing.
And this has been going on for quite. Let's see if there's a sound. Let's see if I can get. Can everybody hear this?
Well, this is kind of a time. Oh wow.
That's insane, huh? It's a camera that's been on it, but this video it's not live. There is a live cam though. I have to look for it. Pretty cool looking. And we still have to pull up, we didn't pull up Torstein's graph, but let me see if I can find real quick. Yeah. And I had it pulled up and see if it's live in Iceland. We could also look at La Palma, which is but this has
let's look at La Palma. That's interesting because that's the new one, right?
Yeah, let's see.
That's the one that Nostradamus told us about.
Yep, and Jim and I talked about this on Wednesday. We went over this on Wednesday. Wow. Look at that. That's a close up. That's a more close up cam than the one I've been watching. Nostradamus says, there's been amazing drone footage. Yeah. Pretty much. Wow. Pretty freaking cool, huh? Wow.
Pretty damn amazing.
Yeah, but it's not cool for the people that live on the island. And we talked about it. And there's a guy I follow now that talks about it every day. And there's been evacuations. And, can you imagine losing everything to a volcano you did not expect? In Hawaii, they expect. In Hawaii, it's happened. They've had to leave. But I don't think people in Spain quite expected this and that they would have to evacuate and lose their stuff. Farmland. And look at this. This is insane.
Pretty amazing.
Let me see if there's another one. There's a few of them. And these live cams. One, when we were kids, could you even imagine this kind of thing? Now, let's see. This is a different cam, different channel, but still there.
How about volcano eruption from hell? That sounded interesting.
Yeah, that's the one we were looking at first.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we were looking at that feed. But it's pretty interesting. There are a lot of stuff. This is Iceland. This was a while back. But when you see people are going, it's still going on, but this is parts that were look at in the day. Look at the sightseers.
They're getting really close to that. That's amazing how close they are to that. Holy smokes.
I know. That's scary. This is Iceland.
Look at that thing.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow,
How
wow.
come they're so close to that?
Okay, Sandy, that damn volcano blew in the 1950s. They built their houses on lava flows. I have no sympathy for the CFMs. Well, thank you for sharing, baby. Thank you for sharing, buddy. Look at this. Wow, wow,
Oh my
wow.
goodness.
It's like, our bodies do the same thing. Oh, get us it. Oh my God. Lord, oh Lordy.
There you have it.
I could watch these videos like for forever. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm happy I found that.
Yeah.
Happy
No,
I found
am
that.
too.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end the
Yeah.
show too.
Well, what I
you know?
was going to do was just pull this up really quick to show you guys if it'll play. This video.
With the volume,
Yeah.
Torstein's.
Yeah, really quick. But for some reason, it's not. Look what it's doing to me. This
Oh,
is
is
silly.
it not?
No,
Never
I
mind.
don't know why.
But I can tell you in a nutshell what she's trying to show. What this is going to show is that the
Yeah.
sea ice volume in the Arctic, and we're talking volume, not extent, is consistently going down at a
going
very consistent, it's going south, right?
The whole premise of
And
his channel.
exactly. And so, sea ice extent, it's interesting, but it's not the whole picture. It's not even a quarter of the picture. Sea ice extent is a manifestation can be like
Oh, I got
2 inches of ice, You got it?
Yep, I'm going to get ready. Get ready, everybody. Strap in. We're gonna play this one. This one is the last one we're gonna play. But yep, I got it.
Are you putting the music on? Because his music
Yep.
is so good.
Yep. Here we go. Here we go. Let me move us.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
Here,
Let's
get
take
us out of the graph. There you go. Right?
See it?
You can see, over the years, this sea ice volume, and this is a volume, not extent, is going down and down and down. 40-year volume average going down. Every year is less volume than the year before. It's a much smoother graph, too. And it's smooth because this is based on an average, right? So you don't have all the peaks and valleys. You can see how
cool.
quick this thing's going down.
Good music too.
Oh, Torsten has really good
Yeah, he does.
music sense. He's got great music sense.
I agree. 40-year ice volume. But when I first watched this the other night, it's wild. Just because you're looking down. Look at and just for to really make a statement. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Well, good, Sandy. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you, Torstein. When you watch this, I don't know if you're here, but thanks for sharing that with us. Well, gosh, this has been a really good show. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I have to say thank you because please like and subscribe. But I have to say thanks for the Buy Me a Coffee again. I have to tell you guys, thank you for being members. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We're not going to monetize this channel, so that's the way we do the little things that we do. And again, I want to say thank you to Kim for moderating. She's having some computer troubles. We're considering doing something to help her. Let's hope you guys would like to be a part of that. So, because we want to thank her. She is our moderator extraordinaire, and it is very important to us to have her with us. So thank you, everybody. Are there any questions out there? I'm looking at the chat, and look at Hunter says, see, hit like, then be nice and buy these great people a coffee. Yay! Thank you, sweetheart. Hunter's awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Well then, Jen, why don't you take it away?
Well, I think that climate change is becoming more evident. The protests are picking up. People are activated. That's really good. And as usual, we love to keep our eyes on the Arctic and watch how it's behaving. So we've seen that, volcanoes can be related, and we can see that the continental plates are shifting due to climate change. We reviewed Zach's graphs as well. So it's fascinating, to keep watching the Arctic as it melts before our eyes.
I really appreciate everybody. And Jennifer, I love doing these shows with you. I learn every show, no matter what. And so the labor of love that I put in for this and for us, it's great. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome, Sandy. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. We love you. We love you. And we will see you, Jennifer and I will see you next Friday night.
Next Friday night.